You're listening to The Extraction, conversations on the systems and strategies behind dental practice growth with Colin Ambler and Kyle Bergman. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to The Extraction podcast. Really excited to have our guest on the show today, Gary Takacs, who, if you're in the dental industry, probably heard of before, a very well-known presence. He brings a super deep knowledge of all the individual elements of dental business, and we're going to dive deep into a lot of them today. But Gary is a published author, a progressive rock fan. I want to ask a couple questions about that. Biker, businessman, and of course, a family man. Gary, welcome to the pod.
Hey, Kyle, it's great to be here. It's fun to be on the other side of the mic. Kyle and Colin, usually I'm the one doing the interviewing, and now I get to sit on the other side of the mic. How cool is this?
I don't know. How cool is it, Gary? Tell us. How does it feel?
Excited. I started the very first dental podcast in 2011. You had to be a real nerd to listen to a podcast back then. You had to have some kind of computer to download it to. You had to have downloading software to bridge it over to an MP3 player. And then if you could figure that part out, you could finally listen to it. And now we just pick up our phone. It's so cool.
Wow. Yeah. And thank you for being the fearless leader to pave the way for all of it feels like everyone and their grandma has a dental podcast these days, right?
So funny story.
Yeah, Gary's the godfather.
I'm the oldest of three boys and close with my brothers. And my brothers have nothing to do with dentistry. But my youngest brother, Greg, called me the other day. I think every family needs an antagonist, right? Because they keep us honest. And Greg called me. He's the GM of a national motorhome dealership. So nothing to do with dentistry. But he said, "Hey, Gary, how's your podcast going?" I said, "Well, Greg, thanks for asking. It's going really well. We're actually the #1 podcast in dentistry." And he said, "What, are there two?" Now, if you knew my brother, you would know how appropriate that comment was because
I love it.
when he was a kid, when he'd hit a home run in Little League, he said, "Greg, it barely cleared the fence. You're lucky there was a tailwind. If there was a headwind, it would not have cleared." But that's just what brothers do. He did rebound very nicely when I said, "Greg, there's actually 142 dental podcasts." He said, "Wow, I'm proud of you." So he did rebound nicely.
Love it.
But had to get a shot in first. That's what brothers do.
Of course. Well, Gary, when we were learning more about all the things that you have done and currently do, one of which jumped out to us was how you teach the business of dentistry at dental schools. And Colin is going to be able to speak more intelligently to this, but one of the things that we have lamented about over the year when building team care and building our in-house practice that we have, Noble Dentistry, is that so many dentists are coming out of dental school excellent at dentistry, terrible at the business of dentistry. And it's great that you are out there, almost like the godfather of teaching the business of dentistry at ground zero. But how come so many dentists are graduating and still so, dare I say, ignorant to running a successful practice?
Well, sadly, that is the truth, Kyle. Dental school is meant to prepare young, aspiring dentists to pass the boards and to be able to function as a dentist. And all of their curriculum is built around that. And there isn't anything on the boards about the business of dentistry. It's all clinical. However, the dean, I'm a guest instructor at Midwestern University School of Dental Medicine here in Glendale, Arizona. And their then dean, Dr. Brad Smith, recruited me. He had heard me lecture at a conference. And by chance, we were sitting at the gate at the airport on the way home, both flying Southwest. And so you pick your own seat. So Dr. Smith asked if he could sit next to me. And I said, sure. And we talked about how his vision was to bring some business and behavioral curriculum, behavioral meaning the people side of dentistry. And he was a relentless recruiter. And he recruited me, paved the way. And I continue to do that. It's a passion of mine. What's really interesting, guys, and I know you'll appreciate this, is the dental students are interested in this. They know it's not on the boards, but they're interested in the fact that they know they're going to need to master this stuff to truly be able to do the dentistry that they're learning how to do clinically. And so it was very heartwarming for me to see the level of interest among even D1 students, that they knew they needed to learn this stuff, and they're soaking it up like a sponge.
Yeah, so I'm fascinated by this, Gary. Tell me what one of the first, like, most common things that you encounter with these guys. What's the first lesson that comes across when you start to introduce the concepts of business and dentistry to doctors?
It's my first slide. It's actually my first slide in the very first lecture in D1. And then it's my last slide in D4 that I show them. And it's a picture of Dr. L.D. Pankey. You all might recognize the name L.D. Pankey, the Pankey
Mm-hmm.
Institute. I'm part of their
In
faculty.
Dawson?
Yep. I'm part of their faculty. I'm a guest faculty at the Institute in Key Biscayne, Florida. But it's a picture of Dr. Pankey, and it's a quote. And it simply says, always remember that there's a person behind those teeth. And I share that with them. And I say, right now in your very first class, very first beginning of dental school, you may have some context of what that means. But by the end of your dental school education, you'll know intimately about what that means. And it's about helping them understand how to connect with the patient they're taking care of.
Yeah.
And it's wonderful when I can see the excitement in their eyes and their excitement in learning. And I tell them that if you want to really excel at helping more patients with their dental health, with whatever aspect of dentistry that is, then you're going to master the people side of dentistry, because it's the people side of dentistry that's going to allow you to do all this amazing dentistry. And it's also what's going to
Mm-hmm.
make dentistry more rewarding. I believe in every ounce of my DNA that dentistry rocks. And I say it rocks because we have the ability to change people's lives every day. And, we can do that clinically and we can do it behaviorally. Maybe someone just needs someone to listen to them. But
Yeah.
it's really lighting that, it's lighting that passion on connecting and connecting with their
Yeah.
patients one-on-one.
So, I mean, my wife and I, we have an office and we've onboarded 10, 20, 30 at least in the course of our 10 years doing it. Fairly new graduates, people have either just graduated dental school or been in, post grad situation or a couple years of practicing, stuff like that. And we've always sort of had this mentorship thing where we do some exams with them, we monitor them, we give them feedback. But one of the big things I think is relevant to what you're saying is that the connection with the patient is so important. I think a lot of people can make the mistake of jumping in a room and jumping immediately into talking dentistry and doing it at very like scientific terms that might not be comprehensible to the patient. And so I'm interested to hear if you have any tips, cheat codes, tricks about that's along that thought train.
It's a hack. And I teach it to the dental students. It's a hack. I tell them, you're going to spend a lot of time in clinic. Once you get to D3 and D4 and you're taking care of patients, I always tell them they have the best patient on the planet in D2, Dexter, the mannequin, the best patient. But then it's going to all change when they get into D3 and actually have patients. And I tell them, you're going to spend a lot of time waiting for your instructor. You're in the room with the patient, you're in the treatment room with the patient, waiting for
Yeah.
your instructor. And there's 5 or 6 other dental students in queue in front of you, and you're waiting. And so early in the relationship with the patient, tell the patient, I'll role play as if I'm the dental student, Colin, and you're my patient. Okay.
Sure.
Colin, first of all, I'm so happy you're here today. I'm going to work really hard on taking good care of you. And I'm going to get to know your teeth really, really well because that's why you're here. But I'm also interested in getting to know you. Colin, tell me about you. Now,
Thanks, doc. Most docs never even asked me that.
let's go back to what I still think is the textbook on relationship building, written by Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence People. What's everyone's favorite topic? Everyone, themselves.
Themselves.
So quick story, my first day teaching, I had lectures 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, all 4 classes. I went back into Dr. Smith's office because I had to be there all day. And I said, what do I do now? He goes, well, I don't know. Why don't you go over to clinic and listen to the students and then pull them aside and coach them, maybe on how to present dentistry, how to talk to patients, how to connect with them. I said, that's what I do for my day job. I'll be happy to do that. So I go over to the dental school clinic, and there's this wonderful young lady, a D3 student, and she was taking care of a patient. This is my first day at dental school. When she was done and the patient left, I walked into the treatment room and I introduced myself. And I said, what did you just do? I had a white lab coat on. I'm sure everyone assumed I was a doctor in there. I said, what did you just do? I said, well, fillings on the upper left. I said, well, how'd they turn out? And she said, well, I think pretty well because the instructor checked them off. So I think I did okay. I said, wow. And I positioned myself in front of the monitor. And I said, I'm so happy that that came out well. What was your patient's name? And she tried to look around me at the screen. And I said, well,
Mm,
I'm blocking the screen. And I said,
mhm,
was she married or was she single? Where's she from? And what is she like? What is she interested in? And the D3 student looked down with kind of a sad expression. And she said, Mr. Takacs, I'm embarrassed. I can't tell you any of those answers. I said, well, her name was Linda. I said, she is originally from Minneapolis and she absolutely, everyone in Phoenix is from somewhere else. She's originally from Minneapolis and she absolutely loves baseball and she's married. And she looked at me with wide eyes. She said, how'd you know that? I said, well, the marriage thing was easy. I looked on her left hand and there was a ring. I did look at
mhm.
the screen to get her name. Okay. But she must be from Minneapolis because she was wearing a Minnesota Twins t-shirt. Well, that's Minnesota. And I said,
Sure.
she probably wouldn't wear a t-shirt if she wasn't interested in baseball. So I'm thinking she's interested in baseball. And I could tell there was a spark in this young D3 student. She was getting it. I could tell.
Mhm.
I said, don't worry. I'm not the relationship police. But I said, the truth is you can get through all of your treatment here in dental school and not know any of those things about your patient. Really, you could walk through your entire career and not know those things about your patients, but it won't be very rewarding for you or them. And I could tell that she was getting it. And every Monday thereafter, I would come find her. The next Monday, she calls me into the Mr. Takacs, I want to introduce you to my patient.
Very
George
cool.
is from Chicago, and he's been out here in Phoenix now for about the last 5 years. He retired out here. And he moved because in Chicago, he could only play golf about 5 months of the year. Now he plays golf 5 times a week. And Mr. Takacs, do you know George has a 7 handicap? Anyway, George was sitting in the chair and he was just beaming. And you could see the look on his face like, I've got this amazing dentist. None of that had anything to do. She was a very good dentist, but none of that had
Yeah.
anything to do with her dentistry. It had to do with her developing her people skills. Fast forward 4 years later, she owned a practice within 2 months of graduation, and she developed a small group to include 5 locations. And much of that can be attributed to the development of her people skills to match her very fine clinical skills.
Wow. Amazing. Yeah, I've seen that so many times over. I think that when I've seen associates that kind of care about the patient first and develop that connection, like they're happier and it's contagious. And otherwise, it's just like they become like a mechanic and they almost dread the work. And it's like really that connection is so important.
I teach a shortcut on this to my clients, and I ask the assistant or the new patient coordinator when the patient's meeting the doctor for the first time. I ask them to learn something about the patient that has nothing to do with their teeth, nothing to do with their teeth.
Hmm.
And when you're
Yep.
introducing the patient to the doctor, patient's in the chair, they're meeting the doctor for the first time. I suggest that you share with the doctor what about the patient that has nothing to do with their teeth. And it might be uh, Colin, no, it's going to be Kyle because I see your background. Dr. Kyle absolutely loves mountain biking. I never thought I'd find someone that loves mountain biking as much as you, but I might have found that person in Kyle. And now Doctor and Kyle are going to talk about mountain biking. And they'll spend a minute talking about mountain biking, talking about their gear, the trails, the things. And there's instantly, actually, something is very much happening in the brain at this point, in the nervous system. We all know about, how the autonomic nervous system works. The brain is functioning in one of two capacities at all times. It's either in rest and digest, or it's run and flee. It's a chaos, a fight or flight. And where is every patient, if it's their first visit to a dental office, where are these subconsciously in their mind? Fight or flight, every time.
Right. Of
And when you start
course.
talking about mountain biking, it instantly switches them over. The client told me this great story the other day, and he said, I think my new patient coordinator was messing with me. Patient was 69 years old. Her name was Millie. And the new patient coordinator said, Doctor, I'd like you to introduce you to our new patient, Millie, today. Millie, this is Dr. So-and-so. And then the new patient coordinator said, Doctor, Millie loves to bake. And she likes to bake just about everything. But what she really loves to bake are pies. That was the tee up to the doctor. Now, the doctor's pretty quick. And he responded very quickly. He said, Millie, I understand from my team member that you love to bake. And yes, doctor, I love to bake. And I understand especially pies. Is that correct? Yeah. He said, well, I know nothing about baking, and I know even less about baking pies, but I do know one thing about pies. And the patient says, "What's that?" And he said, "I like to eat them." She said, "You do?" "Yep." "Well, doctor, what's your favorite pie?" And he said, "Well, that's going to either be blueberry or apple." Remember, this is a new patient that's literally been in the office a matter of minutes. And he said, "It's either blueberry or apple." And she said, "If you could only pick one, what would it be?" "I can only have one?" "Yep, only one." He said, "I'd have to go with blueberry." She said, "Doctor, next time I come in," what has she already decided now? She's a patient. "Next time I come in, I'm going to bring you a freshly baked blueberry pie, and I'm going to follow up with you to find out if that isn't the best pie you've ever had." What does that have to do with teeth? Nothing and everything at the same time. Does that make any sense?
Yeah,
And then in our client offices, our team members know that if they don't have something to queue up, it can be simple. Mary has a 5-year-old just like you. You guys have to swap 5-year-old tails. It could be simple. But if they don't
yeah,
know something about the patient that has nothing to do with their teeth, then they haven't done their job. And it becomes a
of course.
shortcut for the doctor.
So is that something, are you kind of like doing coaching in the private offices too? And are you helping teams and
That's my day
doing
job.
like,
Yeah, my day job is I coach practices all over the country to help them develop their ideal practice. This is my 45th year in our amazing profession. I started in 1980, and absolutely love every aspect of it, but especially the business and behavioral components. So I work with practices all over the country to help them develop their version of their ideal practice.
yeah, amazing. And so, I mean, I think it's like what you're talking about is wonderful. And it's like you tell the story and you like make that come to life so real. And I've seen it in our own practice all over. And I could just immediately, it resonates with me, and I'm sure all of our listeners too. As a technology product, we're on the number side of it, and we track a lot of these things. And I'm sure that you've the business success is probably most likely the byproduct of doing all these things.
We
It's
need
like,
we need both. We need amazing resources to help us with the business side of dentistry. I've been doing this long enough to remember when we didn't have practice management software in the early 1980s. It was just coming in place 1981, 1982. And today we have some great tools, to manage the business side of the practice. And I count team care as one of those. But if you combine these great resources with the behavioral perspective and behavioral training with team members, Dr. Pankey was really a big influence to me. And he offered to mentor me on the behavioral side of dentistry. And the reason he got involved, many dentists consider him to be the father of modern day complex restorative dentistry. But
mhm,
Dr. Pankey was coming up in the profession when much of dentistry was exodontia, was taking teeth out, not restoring them. But he knew that if he was going to be able to help patients with complex restorative dentistry, he needed to get to know them as people. Otherwise, he wasn't going to have the chance to do this amazing dentistry. And that's more true today than ever. Um,
mhm.
and maybe even more pronounced now because there are many practice models that don't include the behavioral side, and uh, uh, you know they can be successful with that. However, I really think when you combine the behavioral side with the business and analytic side, it's a combination that can't be beat.
Yeah. No, so true. I mean, I'm imagining you having this, like, delivering this revelation within offices where people receive, and like you said, to that young dentist that was in school, light bulb goes off. What's it look like maybe like a month or 3 months or 6 months down the road? It's like, how are people like, what goes next? People, and are some, do you see that some team members buy into this immediately? Some people are more resistant. Like, I'm imagining this, you've worked in the big office too. You've had it yourself, 24 team members. Our office has 50 staff members. It's like, I'm picturing this. What's this look like in adoption across the entire team? We're so interested in that.
Yeah, I'd love to tell you there's a generic step-by-step process to follow, and that wouldn't be accurate because the truth is team members will adopt this differently based on their past experience. So they'll adopt the behavioral side of dentistry differently. And I think we have to recognize that a lot of team members have never been exposed to this type of practice. But I find that most people are interested. And if we can give them skills that they can use on a day-to-day basis, give them the resources that they need, I find, pardon my enthusiasm around our profession, But my experience is I
Forgiven.
believe that most dentists and most team members have great hearts. Now, there's exceptions, but
Agreed.
most have great hearts and they want to serve their patients.
Yes, and I think, sorry, I was working with someone later, and she just was over the moon about how much she loved her job because of the social interaction and because she got to care for people. I think everyone's a caretaker of that's why they're in this business for
Well,
in the first
absolutely.
point.
And even if you look at it, at a deeper level, there is a core personality style that is drawn to dentistry. And that poor personality style is they're helpers. They want to help others. And it's actually very cool. And when we provide the tools and the training that allow them to excel and tell as your practice gets you have a very large practice. Many of my clients have large practices, and recently a client of mine, we're on a Zoom call, and he said, Gary, I'm a little bit embarrassed to tell you this, but the older I get, the harder it is to remember all my patients. And I said, well, hey, I get it, but you don't have to remember all your patients at all times. You just have to remember the ones you're seeing today. And he looked at me, his eyes got really big, and he goes, I can do that. and uh, and we set up a system for him to do that. And it's a simple prompt system to do a little bit of homework on the patients he's seeing today. So, for example, if a patient named Maria was in 6 months ago for a hygiene appointment, and one of the things that came up was Maria said she's really excited because next week she was going on a very special anniversary trip with her husband to Hawaii, and it was going to be the first time she ever went to Hawaii. Well, 6 months later, doctor had some prompting, and when he walked in to do the hygiene exam, Maria, I have been dying to. How was your trip to Hawaii?
Yeah,
How is Maria going to feel?
Amazing. Amazing.
amazing,
Yeah,
amazing. That's like what makes the whole patient experience.
yeah. And again, there's tools we can use, shortcuts we can use. You don't have to remember them all at all times. You just have to remember the ones you're seeing today.
Of course.
And I think it
Gary,
also, if you're personality, you got to be interested. If you're not interested, then maybe a certain type of DSO would be a better place for you.
so one thing I want to get your take on, Gary, is the dark side of being a helper. And I know one of your passions is helping dentists achieve an effective work-life balance. And when you're a helper, it can be really hard to delineate between work and life. And so how do you work with your clients to help them create that balance?
Great question. And I think you raise a very important point that very often doctor, he or she will help everyone else, but not themselves. And then they end up shortchanging themselves, their relationships, their family, time, because they're so busy taking care of others that they don't take care of themselves. And I believe the answer to that question, Kyle, is in the practice structure. In other words, the format of the practice. And there's a lot of different practice models. Most of your listeners will know that I'm not a dentist. I've never been a dentist, but I have been a practice owner. From 2007 till 2022, partnered in a practice that developed from a solo doctor practice, ended up developing into a 3 doctor practice. We started with 5 team members and it grew to 24. And I wanted to become a practice owner because I wanted to have a test kitchen where I could test concepts out. And one of the things that I wanted to test out was how we design a practice model that provides an effective work-life balance. Most doctors will tell you, most dentists will tell you they don't feel like they have an effective work-life balance. If it's a set of scales, it's tilted way in favor of work, not so much in life. But I contend that if you have business success and practice success, but it comes at the expense of your relationship with your kids, it comes at the expense of your health and fitness and your hobbies and interests, then it's not success at all. And I'm a firm believer that you can have a world-class practice and an effective work-life balance, and they're not mutually exclusive. Those are not, it's pick any one. You can pick them both, but they're not mutually exclusive. And I like the idea of a 3-day doctor week as a model. You face it, an owner dentist, when he or she puts down the handpiece at the end of, say, their work week, they're not done working, are they?
Mm.
Not even close. Colin, you can identify with that, right?
Yeah, of course. I think there's a lot of dentists out there that don't have the luxury of having like a really strong vested business partner. with them. They're working 30, whatever, 40 hours a week doing dentistry and patient care. And oh, by the way, they're also this business owner and they have to run payroll and they have a whole set of other worries and concerns about the actual business.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
And it's never ending. And then again, being a giver and a someone who cares for others, they leave that part out. That part happens if they have time for it. But I think you build it into the model. When we grew from we were a solo dentist practice, 4 days a week. Doctor was 4 days a week. When we added our initially associate doctor, he was an associate and then he became a partner. We went to both doctors working 3 days a week. One worked Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. The other worked Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. We expanded the hours to 5 days, 7 to 4, 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. patient hours, Monday through Thursday, 7 to 2 on Friday. By the way, we did experiment with Friday afternoon hours. Seemed like a good idea. Everyone wanted to make those appointments until Friday afternoon rolled around. Then they decided not to show up.
cancel wiped out.
But
Yeah,
we
wiped
found
out.
we could work till 2 on Friday and that would hold together. And now our team that team members that needed or wanted 40 hours a week could get that across that model. Most of the team works 4 days a week, and they can certainly get that across that 5-day schedule. And even team members that choose to work 3 days a week can get that schedule across that schedule. But now doctors have a better opportunity to achieve work-life balance because now there's time for relationship with their kids, relationship with their partner, CE that they love, travel, whatever it is they love to do.
Mhm,
And it's built into the model
mhm.
of the practice. And this might be hard for some of your listeners to believe, but I'm going to ask you to take a jump in faith with me. When we went from a solo doctor working 4 days to the doctor working 3 days, he produced just as much working 3 days as he did when he worked 4. Now,
Yeah, I can believe it.
yeah, and the normal
I think
hours,
one of
we
the
didn't net hours.
Yeah, and I think, some of these things start to converge on the same importance of what you said earlier. I think one of the sayings we've always had is there's a difference between busy and productive. And I think that, we've seen it a million times that people that don't stop to create relationships with their patients, they just go through this drive-by exam. And like their results, they're doing a lot. They're running around like in a hamster in a wheel, and they're just not getting the results that they want. And I think if people can take a step back and relax and really kind of like hone the craft of their case acceptance, their relationships, they can do a lot more with the time that they do put in.
Yeah. If we have any listeners to the extraction that are challenging me now saying, Gary, did you say he produced just as much 3 days a week as when he worked 4? How'd you do it? Well, let's go ahead and answer it. Really, 2 things. Number 1 was scheduling discipline. Scheduling discipline. Really putting some structure and discipline around how we schedule. And then the second thing was by having an associate doctor, we could push some things downhill. When our doctor was a solo dentist and the patient needed a two surface filling, who did it?
Doctor.
Doctor. Now he could push some things downhill, freeing up his schedule to be more productive doing what I like to call high value dentistry. Things like
Hmm.
placing implants, placing restoring implants, adult orthodontic, cosmetic dentistry, complex restorative dentistry, diagnosing and treating obstructive sleep apnea with appliance therapy. And it's
So
through the relationship side that you're going to be able to do those things because they know you care
100%.
about them.
Yep. Tell me a little bit about what you were talking about with the schedule discipline. I'm interested.
So it's interesting how I've had the privilege of doing this for a long time, and I've seen lots of different schedules. And
Yeah.
a lot of times, a well-laid plan when it comes to the schedule just sort of evaporates over time, and it ends up being a person just putting in names. Literally. So I like to teach a concept of engineering your schedule to have consistently productive days, and we do that with blocks, scheduling blocks. Years ago, someone taught me the concept of rock blocks, rock, sand, and water.
Yes.
Yeah.
I knew you were going to say this. Continue though.
Well,
Yeah.
I want to
Go
give her
on.
credit because Jennifer D. St. George, Jenny taught me that many, many, many years ago. So shout out to Jenny for teaching me that. Rock, sand, and water. Rocks represent your bigger production blocks of time. Sand represents your minor production, and water represents little or no production. So rocks would be, it all depends on what type of practice you have, your range of services, but rocks would include things like crowns. Now, here's a trick question. Colin, is it okay if I put you on the spot for a second?
I'm ready.
Could fillings be a rock?
I guess depends how many.
Ding, 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 ding. You just got it. Depends how many.
Yes.
If we're doing a quadrant, of fillings, that could be a rock, correct?
Yeah, a single surface,
Two
sand.
surface single tooth filling is going to be sand. And now here's the other trick question: rock, sand, water. Remember, water is little or no production. What's the doctor part of the new patient exam? Rock, sand, or water? It is a trick question.
I guess, I mean, given it's, I would go sand, but maybe rock.
Well, it's watery sand that can become a rock. So it's water because it's by unit of time. It's not very pretty. You can't charge enough, even in a fee for service
Sure.
practice. You can't charge enough for your exam. That's really what it's worth. But it could be your next full mouth reconstruction. It could be your next Invisalign case. Could be your next smile
Yeah,
design case. So you want
sure.
to treat it like it's a rock. So discipline around
Okay.
those rocks, and then opening up time to do more of high value services in those rocks is where you can produce just as much in 3 days. It's funny,
Sure.
before we did that in my own practice, I had helped many doctors go from 4.5 or 5 days to 4, and always produce more at 4 days than when they worked 5. And when we had a chance to go from 4 to 3, it kind of gave me the ultimate litmus test to test it. And sure
Mhm.
enough, it was the scheduling discipline and the mix of services that allowed us to be very, very, very successful with that.
Okay, so I got a question for you. We have a product, it's part of our treatment plans module, and it's a really cool technology suite. It's an iPad. It goes into the room. We present treatment plans on it. Patients can sign, they can pay, all these things. One of the things that was a really important piece of the creation, the birth of this, and the ongoing monitoring of it was kind of understanding what kind of financial arrangements were happening with the treatment coordinator and the patient in the room. And so I'm curious. I think there's a couple different ways we could go on this, but when you're talking about scheduled discipline, tell me what you think your best recommendation is for people and financial arrangements. Are you recommending people have a deposit? Do they put no money down? Do they put all money down? I know that's like a lot of different case by case stuff,
Well,
but I think it's important for people.
I've taught a concept for years where I call it always practice financially arranged dentistry. That means the patient understands all fees, they understand their expectations before we do anything in their mouth. It's a no surprises policy.
Hmm.
And I've taught the concept for years of offering patients. I know this can be controversial, so I'll ask those listening to have an open mind. I have taught the idea of a prepayment courtesy. In other words, if they'd
Hmm.
like to take care of payment today in advance, we offer
Yes.
you a 5% prepayment courtesy.
Hmm.
And I like that for a number of reasons. First of all, I like the time value of money. You guys understand business, time value of
Of
money. I'd
course.
much rather have it in my account than on my accounts receivable ledger. But the second reason is when someone prepays for something, they are much more likely to show up. And think about
Oh, yeah.
let's step outside of dentistry. One of the things I like to look at is how do other businesses solve their issues, and can we take that and apply that to dentistry? Think about the last time you flew somewhere. Did you just show up
Okay.
to the airport and op you know, pull out your credit card to buy that ticket? No, you paid for it ahead of time, didn't you?
Of course.
So
Of
I like
course.
the idea of a prepayment courtesy, and we tell the patients, if you'd like to take care of payment, we offer our patients a 5%, a prepayment courtesy, and we tell them how much
Yep.
that would be. Let's just say hypothetically, it was $1,000 procedure. That'd be a savings to you of $50. Would you like to go ahead and take advantage of that savings and take care of payment today? And many people do. It gets a little more complicated when we're dealing with insurance. We have to be careful about
Sure.
that. But and having a wide range of payment options. And I would people ask, well, what should I accept as payment options? My answer today is whatever they have. And that used to
Mhm.
mean MasterCard, Visa, American Express, Discover, and now it means things like Apple Pay, Venmo, and other payment devices that
Yeah.
are on their phone. Whatever they have, you should take.
Yeah. No, amen, amen. I think we were preaching earlier, we're having the same conversation about picture these are airline seats. And if you want to come in at a specific time for a specific date with this doctor, it's like it's incredibly important that you can't just say yes, yes, yes. It's like we see that as like I think that when you talk about scheduled discipline, it goes hand in hand with like the integrity of the schedule. It's like anyone can put appointments on the schedule that are junk and the patient might floozy, cancel, whatever. but like so important that the financial arrangements happen. I think a lot of offices, try to tell their staffs that, hey, nobody can book an appointment without having money down in some way, shape, or form. But we found that some organizations had trouble kind of like having that discipline internally, that treatment coordinators would feel bad and that they had to charge the patient in advance or something like that. And they let them walk out the door. And so
But
we
that's
kind of set up enforcement and tracking around that to kind of make it accountable.
That's why I love what you're doing, because what you're doing is providing the tools that the team members need to do this. There's a very famous saying that I first heard from Dr. Phil, the television psychologist personality. I do have Dr. Phil's hairline, but I don't have the mustache or the French blue shirt. But I'll role play as Dr. Phil. Dr. Phil said, and I think he's right, you train people how to treat you. You train people how to treat you. And so how about training patients on our expectations? Let me give you an example. This is something that I believe at one time or another, all of your listeners will encounter. What do we do with the larger families where mom has 3 or 4 kids and she wants to schedule all the kids at the same time she wants to schedule her own hygiene appointment and the kids all at the same time. Now I'm a parent of 4 kids. Teresa and I, we've been married 43 years. We have 4 adult kids. And I remember back
Congrats.
when thank you. She deserves a medal. She does remind me of that on a regular basis. She does. But when Teresa was making the dental appointments for her kids, she wanted to book them at the same time. Um,
Sure.
so here's how I teach our clients to do that. Let's say the patient's name is Maria. Maria, we're family people. We understand how hectic it can be, running the kids around all the time. We're happy to make the appointments at the same time. So it is be one trip for you. The only thing I need you to do is I need you to check your schedule and make sure that this time is going to work for you, because we're blocking a lot of time out, individual time in our hygiene department for you and the kids. And if for any reason you need to change it, you need to give me at least 2 days advance notice, or we
Hmm.
won't be able to schedule this block in the future. How does that sound to you? And they nod their head and say yes. Now I'm setting up expectations, right?
Right.
And they'll either keep the appointment or they'll call a week ahead of time. So, oh my gosh, I didn't know what I was thinking.
Of course.
And they want to keep
Yeah.
their privileges, right?
And had that not be set, I think their patients would kind of walk all over you, or they wouldn't have the same type of
They
respect
wouldn't
for
have
the
the same respect,
situation.
but they understand. So we have good communication skills, good tools. They have to have good tools as well. Love your concept of having it on a tablet, in the treatment room, in the consultation room. All the information is right there. We don't have to stumble
And
around and try to find it.
yeah, and one other thing we got a couple minutes left. I want to maybe like get your pulse on this because you've worked with so many people. One of the things that we love about the technology we're building is that there's this reward system built in that we don't by design. It's like accountability is very important. We need to track who's doing what. It's like we set these policies in place. Are they adhering to them? It's like that keeps everyone honest and on the same line. But when someone does a great job, we love the feeling of them getting excited that they did a great thing and that they're recognized for that. And recognition doesn't always have to be monetary. In our platform, we have a lot of leaderboards and people love to see in a particular category their case acceptance, their same day, their number of reviews. We count all sorts of things that they're distinguished amongst their peers or that they just knew that, hey, I was supposed to get a financial arrangement done and I offered this person that 5% courtesy, and the patient said yes. And they go back to their desk and they're so excited to put their results into team care because it feels good. And I think that's why staff members really are liking to use team care because all of these things that could have gone under the radar in a given day we bring to the forefront amongst their peers. So I'm wondering if you have had an experience with reward systems or there's certain things around the office that should be recognized and rewardable like that.
I'm a huge fan of incentive compensation and incentive rewards. I really believe that I've seen it make a big difference in practices. I've seen it make a big difference at the individual level in practices. I've seen alignment of vision, alignment of goals. There's
Hmm.
just so many cool things. And like you, Colin, I don't think everything needs to be incentivized. Some of it should be part of the job. However, I think when we're doing above and beyond, we should set up a system And I love the gamification that you have in place. We should set up a system that rewards exceptional performance with an incentive. Big believer in that. It's interesting. Years ago, a client of mine said, Gary, we were talking about the idea of putting together some kind of incentive system. He said, my team's just not motivated by incentive. And I listened. I just had to bite my tongue and I listened. And I said, have you asked them? And he said, no. I might
Yeah,
suggest
that
you
was
ask
his.
them. Because I said that was back in the day when paychecks were still delivered,
Yeah,
in an envelope
the
back
omelet.
in the
Yeah,
day. And I said, has any one of your team members ever handed it back to you and said, no, thanks, Doc. I'm just doing this for fun. And we laughed. He said, heck no. He says, the way it works is on payday, the pay envelopes go in their individual cubbies, and then they do a burnout out of the parking lot at lunch to get to the bank to deposit them. I
yeah,
said, I have a feeling incentive's going to work really well with yours.
yeah.
He said,
Some
yes.
So some of I mean, so like to your point that some of the stuff is just part of the job, but we found that some things like people just will not do as part of their hourly package. One of those things is reactivation phone calls. Like you're basically cold calling patients to try to get them back for their hygiene visits. If you just say, "Hey, I'm going to pay you $20 an hour," go do all those reactivation calls. Like it tends to get stale,
Well,
and
if you
so
want to
like
hit, like, what are some things peak performing practices do? Um, I'm going to rattle off 3.
yeah, this was what I was gonna say, Gary. I'm putting you in the hot seat.
Here's
I want
3.
your top three.
Forget the rest of it. Get these things right. You'll be awesome. How about treatment plan acceptance? How about accepting treatment you recommend? I'm just saying.
Yes.
How about patient reactivation? Because patients drift. Good people can drift. And then how about individual accountability, team member accountability? Get those things right. And there's other things to pay attention to. But I guarantee
Okay. So,
the ROI on those 3 things will make such a difference in the practice.
Gary, I knew we were going to be best friends. Now, we've really made it our business to make this a turnkey tracking mechanism because that to me has been one of the hardest parts. Tell me, in your experience, I know you haven't really worked a ton with team care, but like, how do people track treatment plans out there? How do they track
Well,
case
I mean,
acceptance? Are we talking spreadsheets?
my quick reaction is they don't. They don't. And I can prove that by simply asking any of your listeners to pull an unscheduled treatment plan report. And then unscheduled, you better be sitting down when you look at that. Because if you've been in practice any amount of time at all, that's going to amount to millions of
Yeah,
dollars.
a lot
Millions
of
of
commas.
dollars.
Yeah.
A lot of commas in there. These are people that have a need, have been presented with dentistry, and now are just floating around. And I understand treatment acceptance is a little tricky because I look at dentistry as basically falling into 3 different buckets. There's urgent care. This their tooth
Hmm.
is swollen out to here. They haven't slept for 3 nights. Your treatment acceptance on emergency dentistry should be 100%. And
Mm,
I'm not going to water that down. It should be 100%.
I'm with you.
Next is everyday general dentistry for asymptomatic teeth. For asymptomatic teeth. So replacing old amalgam fillings. They're clearly worn.
Hmm.
They're breaking down every which way. You could tell it visually. You could tell it by photographic inspection. You could tell by radiographic inspection, by scanning. They need to be replaced. But guess what? They don't hurt. What's the goal for case acceptance on everyday general dentistry is asymptomatic? 70% or above. 70% or above. And what about ideal care? We can call it, optimal care, ideal care, comprehensive care.
Mm.
I suggest case acceptance immediately on that care, not over time, but immediately should be between 30 and 40%. Can I share with you how I came up with that?
I would, and I just need to pause with you for a sec, and I'll mention this because you're making my product design brain go off the charts here. We have a very wonderful workflow that makes treatment plan presentation seamless and it tracks everything the whole way. And we've kind of always tried to establish what the proper benchmark is for case acceptance. And when you put it into categories like that, I think it makes a lot of sense.
It
It's
really
like
does.
because you can't put everything all lumped in one category because stuff is different, just like you're talking about. I think that's wonderful. I love that. I love that framework,
So here's the context. I grew up in a baseball family. I
man.
enjoy baseball. Now, Colin, do you follow baseball?
My favorite movie is Moneyball.
Oh
Does
my
that count?
God. Yeah. we're kindred spirits, man. Moneyballs. If you haven't watched it, catch it on Netflix. It's amazing.
And
All right.
yeah,
So, what do they call a Major League Baseball player, an MLB, that had a lifetime batting average of 350? What do they call him?
Hall of Fame.
Hall of Famer. Well, I'd like to think all of your listeners are Hall of Famers or have the potential to be Hall of Famers. What does that mean? That means he got a hit 35% of the time. So that's why I benchmarked it between 30 and 40%. And
Hmm.
I'm talking about now, not down the road. And that's how I benchmarked that. And that's how we measure it. Ideally, I'd like that number to be higher over time because sometimes it's just not the right timing for them. They're interested, but it's not the
Right.
right timing.
So yeah, I mean that's where my product brain is going. I'm like, I think we have this nice flow, but I think there's a very meaningful thing of like a little kind of checkbox or chooser. Like, I mean, how do you start to classify that stuff? Maybe you can inform maybe some of our next. That's like someone comes in. I mean, you can't assume that all root canals are emergency urgent care.
Correct.
I mean, maybe it's something that we have to really incorporate into as a qualifier
There
in
can
our
be a
case
little,
acceptance tracking.
I'd love
You know,
everything to be objective because objective is science. But
correct.
there is some subjectivity in this. But by having some benchmarks, it allows us to have some parameters with which to improve and
Yes.
to work on things.
Totally.
On
And
taste,
that's
I think go back to
and that's I think, no, I mean, what I was gonna say is even back to where we started with this about kind of coaching doctors and helping them improve their case acceptance through relationship building and all these things. One of the things that we love to see with the metrics that we track is progression. Like, we love to show people, here's where you started, and we've gone on this journey for 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 5 months, whatever, and look at where you are now. And those numbers are really gratifying to people.
yeah. Like the United Way fundraiser, like the thermometer that shows you
Yeah.
it's your progress. It's progress, not perfection. Progress, not perfection. Let's go back to case acceptance for a minute. I've had a lot of fun teaching this to clients. Can I role play with you, Colin? I'll be the
Yeah.
doctor and you be the patient.
Let's do it. Let's
And
do it.
let's say you're a bit older, quite a bit older than you are. You're in your 60s. There's a lot going on in your mouth, but nothing is symptomatic. You've got severely worn dentition. You've got little nubby teeth. I mean, we see this all the time. So now the
Mhm.
patient's coming in, but nothing's hurting. And so this is the dialogue I asked the doctor to have a conversation with the patient. It says something like this. Colin, first of all, such a pleasure meeting you today. I'm honored that you chose our practice for your care. Welcome to our patient family. I've had a chance to gather some records. We took some records today. I've had a chance to take a look at those. I've also had a chance to talk to you about what your goals are with your teeth. Before I just present a treatment plan, now let me hit pause on the role playing for just a second. I think every dentist on the planet has an internal challenge of not knowing if they should present the whole enchilada or just
Mm.
present the immediate stuff, right? Here's how to get through that. Had a chance to talk to you about things you're interested in. But before I present a treatment plan, watch what I do with my head right now. I call him. Can I ask you a question? And what are you going to do right
Yes.
back? You're going to nod your
I
head.
do
Yeah.
the same thing.
Now I'm gonna do this in the plain vanilla way, then I'm gonna turbocharge it. So here's the plain vanilla
Alright.
way. Plain vanilla way is, Colin, it's apparent to me, and it may be to you, that there's a lot of issues going on in your mouth. But before I present a treatment plan, the question I have for you is now the right time in your life to address those conditions ideally? And then I zip it up.
Mhm.
And the patient might say, yes, that's why I'm here. Or they might say, well, as a matter of fact, yes, this, and this. And so then what I'm going to do is fall back into plan B. And I'm going to say, well, assuming nothing needs attention right away, but I'm going to encourage you to be very faithful about keeping your hygiene appointment. Your gums are nice and healthy. That means we'd see you every 6 months. I'd like to encourage you to be very faithful about keeping those hygiene appointments. I'll come in and do exams, and I'll keep an eye on how things are progressing. If things are holding, I'll let you know. If things are starting to slip, I'll let you know as well so we could prevent something from becoming a bigger problem. So now I'm going to turbocharge this because I know something about you. And in our fiction here, you're in your 60s, and we know that you just moved to this area to be closer to your kids and grandkids. Okay, that's what I know about you. Okay. So now I'm
Hmm.
going to, same thing. I'm going to say, Colin, really great to meet you today. I'm honored that you've chosen our practice. I've had a chance to look at the records that we've gathered. But before I do that and share a treatment plan with you, is it okay if I ask you a question? You'll say yes. I know, Colin, that you just moved here to be closer to your kids and grandkids. What a cool season of life this is. It's been a while since I've moved, but I remember the last time I moved, there were a lot of moving pieces going around. I was feeling kind of unsettled. With respect to the fact that you've just moved here, is now the right time to address what's going on in your mouth, ideally. Now, that one will be more effective because I did the connection piece. And it could be,
Hmm.
you could be a woman late 40s, and I know you have 3 kids in college. I'm going to say, you shared with me you've got 3 kids in college. I actually remember those days. I had 3 in college at one time, and that was a challenge. But with respect to those college tuition bills, is now the right time to address what's going on in your mouth ideally? And she might say, yeah, grandma and grandpa provided 529 plans and it's all set. I'm good. But to answer your
Yeah.
question, about a third of the time, 30 to 40% of the time, patients said, yeah, that's why I'm here. The majority,
Yeah.
it's not the right time. But notice what I've done. I've opened the door to I've got them enrolled in hygiene. So it's not just all or not. I think what happens if all we do is all or nothing, we get a lot of nothing. So now there's a fallback provision to keep them in hygiene. In my own practice, 60% of the high value dentistry, what I call high value services, comes out of existing patients in hygiene because now they're ready.
Of course. And they trust. Yeah. And
40%
it's all
comes
about
from, yeah,
timing.
40% comes from
Yeah, it's all
marketing.
about timing. And if you don't ask, and if you don't relate and stuff like that, you don't get. It's like perfect. So, Gary, these were pearls of wisdom, gold blocks, gems. I think we could talk probably for maybe another hour if they let us.
Well,
Yeah,
But
we gotta have Gary.
I'll put
the
you,
producers at the
Yeah.
extraction.
I'll put you on the spot, Colin and Kyle. You wouldn't have to ask me twice to come back. I'm just saying. I'm just
Abs
All right.
This is absolutely part 1 of who knows how long of a series, but it's so it's so validating, Gary, to hear from someone who has been in the space, is literally called the godfather of dental podcasting, and to say so many things that we practice and preach daily at both Team Care and Noble Dentistry. For those that are listening, if you want to learn more or chat with Gary, you can find him and check out his coaching services at thrivingdentist.com, as well as at the Pankey Institute, which is www.pankey.org. Gary, it was a pleasure having you on. Thank you so much for joining us.
Kyle and Colin. The privilege was all mine. Thanks so much for the invitation.
Thanks so much, Gary. This was great.
Thank you for listening to The Extraction with Colin Ambler and Kyle Bergman. Read episode notes and transcripts at teamcaredental.com.